Hello, Pixels, and welcome to another episode of the Pixel Podcast. Today, we have our wonderful co-sponsor, Dr. Keating, for the show. So, Dr. Keating, tell us some stories from when you first started OHS. Like, give us some of the best lore drops from OHS.
Well, thank you, Hunter, for hosting this interview. I really appreciate it. Let's see, I was hired in July of 2006. And we launched the school in September 2006. So I had 2 months to get ready. Now, luckily, one of my strengths is operating in a startup environment, which is more unpredictable, fast-paced, long hours, hundreds of key decisions being made, remade, and building the infrastructure, the norms, processes, many of which will remain throughout the lifetime of the school. So I knew what I was getting into, but I really believed in the mission statement of the online high school when they hired me. And it was the mission statement. It's been worked and reworded, but the basic principle or the basic essence of it has never changed. And the mission, by the way, of the online high school is to foster a worldwide community of intellectually adventurous students and students. But frankly, the early years of the online high school was so much fun. When you're creating something new, it's intense, it's exhilarating, plus working with such brilliant, amazing people like Professor Patrick Suite, was his idea, and the 2 deputy directors of the education program for 50 years, as it was called before, Ray Lavalia and Dr. Rick Summers, and the original OHS instructors, and all the people behind the scenes that were the technologists that were helping to build infrastructure for the school. It was just wonderful working with all of them. So some stories. I think the first story I want to tell is how we created the school day and the school week. I think that is one of the most important additions to the research on online high schools or online schools. And what we did was, Ray Ravalia and I went into his office. We had this giant whiteboard, the biggest whiteboard, it's like almost an entire wall. And we both knew that we didn't want the students to sit at their computer from 8:30 in the morning till 3:30 at night, with just a few breaks. So what we did is we took a history class. We said, okay, imagine a history class, and at a regular brick and mortar school, students are meeting 1 hour every day in the history class. So that's 5 hours. So then we're like, what are they doing in those 5 hours? So we thought, well, probably about 20 minutes in a day, the teacher is telling them something. They're lecturing, they're showing a problem, they're talking about something. And so we said, okay, let's see, that adds up to about 2 hours. So we thought, okay, well, for 2, it's a little less than that, but we thought, okay, so we're going to take off 2 hours of the 5 hours. There was 3 left. And we're going to have the instructors film their lectures so that the students will watch those outside of the classroom on their own time. And the cool thing about that is, and I don't know how much of that they still do, but the original idea was the lectures would be filmed so that the student could sit there and they could watch the whole thing, or if they understood the topic, like let's say the topic was balancing simultaneous equations in mathematics. If you know how to do that, then you wouldn't have to watch the lecture because you already know. You might watch it just to make sure you know how to do it. Anyway, it puts control of the presentation of the material in the student's hands, so that, let's say you don't understand it, you have to watch it a lot of times, or you can pause it. Like, you know how sometimes you're in a lecture and you veg out at like the most critical thing, and then you're like, wait, what did they say? And then you're totally lost. So that we put that in control. So now we had 3 hours left. We thought, well, probably 20 minutes a day, the students and the teachers are like talking, they're discussing things. They're even more than that. we thought, okay, well, we'll give 2 hours, and some classes actually take a little more than that. But we started with 60-minute classes that meet twice a week. And we can't make them meet in consecutive days because they need time to go watch the lecture and whatever. So we'll go Monday to Wednesday and Tuesday, Thursday, with all the classes on Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. And I'm telling you, as we were figuring this out, we're like, this is brilliant. Because we were just dissecting what actually happens. And then the last piece was, well, we thought for some part of because we had like 1 hour left, what are we going to do with that? We don't want to lose it. And so we thought, well, part of the time the students are in a brick and mortar class. They're working at their desk or they're thinking or so we thought, okay, we'll take that 1 hour and we'll put it on Friday, and we won't have any classes on Friday. So let the kids work on things. Now, the irony of all of this is I eventually was asked to teach a leadership class during the school year, and it was put on Friday. And I'm like, no. But anyway, it's the only class that's taught on Friday. But the reason they had to do it is it's an elective, and they didn't want it interfering with anything else. And so anyway. But that's why the only class at least, I don't know, maybe there's other classes on Friday now. But originally, the only class on Friday was mine. So I think that's an important, from a research standpoint, what we showed is we can be more efficient with the school day. And I think a lot of people learn from that. I'm telling you, this is the honest to God truth. I was so concerned, you guys, as I was a brick and mortar, leader, just regular schools, high performing schools, and the idea of only having the kids see the teachers twice a week, 1 hour. Honestly, I had to take deep breaths in those first weeks. But ultimately, it was the right decision. And it was a good decision because what we did as a fail-safe is teachers have office hours. We thought if the students needed more time with the teacher, they could get it more one-on-one or in small groups with a similar question. So anyway, it was a roaring success. But I got to tell you, I lost a lot of sleep over in the early months. Okay, so that was the one thing I wanted to say. The other thing is, even though we only had 28 students, which sounds like we only had 20. I think maybe we had 29. I think we had 29. And the thing is, that sounds like not many students, right?
Yeah.
So the teachers only had a few students, but they were taking their lectures, and they were teaching. So they were like only, I think, a month ahead of the kids, on the lectures. So it was a really, really tough couple of years as far as just the work that we were doing. But it was worth it. It was worth it.
This all worked out like really well. Like the system we have right now, everything just like pieces together really well, and I think the schedule really worked out. It's really interesting to hear like how it all came together.
So another thing that I did is when you're doing something new, especially something as innovative as the Stanford Online High School, I set up a number of surveys, and we surveyed the 29 students all the time. And this is part of our culture, is this feedback loop from the family. We surveyed the parents, we surveyed the students, and we were in constant, telling everyone, let us know how things are going. If you have any concerns, And so I get this email from a parent, and the parents, by the way, had my cell phone number, my email. The students had my cell phone number. If anybody had any issues, they could call or text me, and they did at all hours because it was they were everywhere. But somebody, a history teacher, who was fabulous, by the way, but he assigned 900 pages of reading in 1 week. So that showed up very early. So we had to meet, the instructors and I, and we're like, okay, we have to put limits on. So what we did is we set up this situation where everybody would know what everybody else is assigning. So that was the first step, because you don't want to assign. Well, you never want to assign 900. but anyway, so we took care of that, and we knew about it right away. We always were pivoting. We were in a constant state of pivot the first 5 years, because if anything wasn't going well, we had to pivot immediately. the thing that drove me, the guiding light that drove me was nothing we do can negatively impact the student. We will be the ones that adjust. We will be the ones that fix it so that the student who is taking a risk coming to the online high school, and these are talented students, they will not be in any way, not negatively impacted by something we're doing. So that's why we also were researching ourselves. We actually had researchers coming in. I was working with them. I helped author a number of papers, just looking at what we were doing, because this was the grand experiment. We wanted to make sure we were doing it well. One other story I have to share. I mean, I've got so many. There's so many stories, but this is an important one. This is a really important one for the students. So here I am, the head of this new school. All the people that work for me, who I either hired or were hired before me, are all brilliant PhDs in their subject areas, fabulous people. And I go into the faculty meetings, which we were meeting every week. Like, faculty doesn't meet there every week now, but we were meeting every week because things were, it was like very dynamic. But I said to them, I said, okay, I, as the head of the school, have to evaluate you. Okay? And of course, everybody's like cringing, And I said, so to do that, I want you to tell me, what do I have to look at? Like, what am I looking at? And I said, the hard part is, we have the brightest kids on the planet. How do I know you're doing a good job? everybody was like, so it became a challenge. Like, yeah, how would we know we're doing a good job? Right? Because the kids are so smart. And what we did is we crafted, I think there were 10 essential skills of a great online high school instructor. And we had, for every skill, we had to have something you could see. Like, so my favorite one was the nebulous one that Dr. Jeff Scarborough, our head of philosophy, the philosophy class, is the person you probably still see in lectures. He felt that a great online instructor would be inspiring to their students. And I'm like, how are you going to know that? What are you going to look for? You know what he said? You would look for how many people, like, what is the demand for the class? And I thought, well, that's a really good idea, because if nobody wants to take the class, if you have people anyway. So for for example, one of the skills was that you grade and pass that work with meaningful feedback quickly. Well, that's an easy measure, because you can see it. You can look at the grade book and see how fast the instructors are, giving back assignments.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really, really important. But I like that story. I like to tell that story because I want the students and parents to know that we took what we were doing very seriously, and we put a high bar on the students, but we put a high bar on ourselves. Because again, the faculty also wrote, how do you know the head of the school is doing a good job? So, because they helped evaluate me. So anyway, but it was that kind of, this is why it was so wonderful. It was this wonderful environment of collaboration where we all wanted to do the best job we could. And so we tried to set things up so that we would know we were doing a good job. So,
yeah, that sounds like a really good environment for doing all of these innovations that you guys are doing.
Well, and exactly, because we want to make sure that it was very, very hard work, but it was so much fun. when you're in that innovative kind of inventive frame of mind, it was just so much fun. It's one of the hard things we had to do early on, believe it or not, to get accredited, because I think there were 3 or 4 online schools. I mean, we were one of the first.
Yeah.
And I knew the people that started the other ones because I was in constant communication with them, asking them questions. But one of the tough questions, which now we've taken care of, but how do you have the students take tests? They can't take it at home with their parents.
Yeah.
So that was a tough thing that we had, and people still contact the online high school to ask them how did you handle that. But what we did was, believe it or not, there were testing centers all over the place. So you had to find a testing center, or if you had a school, like say you were going part-time, and you could get someone at the school to do it, we would allow that. So anyway, it was really interesting what we had to do. And then we even thought about having a camera on so we could watch the students ourselves. I mean, but you think that's a simple thing, but it wasn't. We had to come up with this. And but now it's all, here we are, let's see, 2006, 2024, so it's been quite a while. So now online high school is very effective at all these things, because they've had a lot of time to test out different things, and there's new technology too. But that was something that, for the people that were giving us our accreditation, was really important.
One thing I really wanted to know about, which is give us some lore drops on the Pixel, our lovely mascot. Where did our Pixel come from?
So that was, so here's the funny thing. I wanted a separate logo for the school.
Yeah.
And they actually hired my sister, she was a Disney Imagineer. She's designed theme parks all over the world. Actually, one of her designs are being implemented at the new Epic Park in Universal Studios. Anyway, so she was hired to, and so I remember being in Ray Ravaglia's office once again with a big whiteboard, and she came in with all the different logos she had, and actually we picked one, and but that's not used, because what was decided was we didn't want to be seen as separate from Stanford. We wanted to be seen as integral to Stanford. So that's why the logo is basically Stanford's logo. But I don't have a picture of the logo she came up with, but it was really, really good. But when we weren't allowed to we didn't use that, I thought, okay, but we need a mascot. So I had a competition. I said, okay, we're going to pick a mascot. I have no idea what it would be. So I gave the students like a month or two and said, just submit your...
students try to come up with it?
Yes. And I think in the file cabinet at Stanford, in Dr. Hoshi's office, because I left all my files, I had a file with all the all the ones that people submitted. But the winner, they had a piece of graph paper, 1/4-inch graph paper. And all they did was draw a square of one of the, this 1/4-inch squares, and put arms and a leg and a face on it. And just said Pixel. And that, I posted all of them online so kids could look, and Pixel overwhelmingly, everybody loved the Pixel. So that was our mascot.
Everybody loves the Pixel, yeah.
And then the other thing I was going to say, we had to set up a student government. That was really fun. Yeah, this is my favorite story about the student government. So about year 3, we had a student who became, or maybe it was year 4, somewhere in there, we had a student who wanted to implement changes to the student government, but the person who was in charge of, I think, oversight of the student government to make sure they weren't doing anything they shouldn't have been was a student named Arthur Lau. Now, Arthur Lau, you should write that name down and follow this person, because since this, what happened, they graduated from the OHS, they went to Stanford, they went to Yale, and I think they double majored in philosophy and, I want to say, I forgot the other one, and then they went to law school. So I don't know where Arthur Lau is today, but what he did was, he had the most precise mind of anyone I've ever met in my life. In fact, I don't think he missed a question on any exam he ever took at the OHS, or the SAT, the ACT, the ACT. Never missed a question. And I don't know if he had a photographic, whatever, but really unbelievable. And what he did was, he wrote this 22-page report saying that the president of the student body was about to violate the Constitution of the leader of the government, and how he was going to do it. Oh my gosh, it was awesome. it was awesome. And so obviously those changes weren't made. It was such a wonderful thing, though, to see that happen. And again, the student government is such a vital part of this school. But yeah, we set it up year one, and the Constitution, they had to write it, and Dr. Jeff Scarborough again helped him write that, and I think
That's cool.
yeah, I mean a lot of things were going on in those early years that haven't changed. A lot of things have changed.
That's true. Like I'm the board chair of events on the student government, and even now, like when we're making decisions, we all like still refer to that constitution and stuff. Like, granted, there's been some like amendments made to it, but still the very original copy, I think, at its core.
Right, and that's because of Arthur Lau. He was not going to allow students to willy-nilly do whatever they want. And I wish I could find that 22-page report that he wrote, because it was like you were reading a report from some high-powered lawyer in New York that came in.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing. He's amazing. And so, anyway, and then the last thing I wanted to share is the graduation week, how that began, because here we had 29 students, and I think 28 of them came, and I actually offered to pay for the 29th one myself to come, but they had something they could not miss, and I forgot what that was, but they wanted to come, but they just couldn't come. But we had all the other 28 come, and we held it in between Nora Supes Hall and Ventura Hall, and Nora Supes was the grandmother of Patrick Supes, who Professor Supes was the person who launched the, we were all under his wing. And it was this beautiful courtyard. And here's the interesting thing. So the students had never met each other. They'd only seen each other on, in Adobe Connect. Actually, we didn't use Adobe Connect to begin with. I forgot what we used, but whatever class we used, we just had a talking head that So when they arrived and they were walking up, it was really interesting to see them. I think I did film some of this because I had my camera. But they were like really, like they didn't recognize each other because instead of just the head, they had the whole body. And it's like it might be you're taller than I thought, or you're shorter than I thought, or your hair is bigger than I thought, or whatever. So for about 20 minutes, there was this awkwardness, right? But after that, it's like they knew each other their whole lives, and they were running around having a great time. So I thought, that is so interesting, And in year two, a Los Angeles Times reporter came up to do a story on our school, and the title of that story was more clicks, like mouse clicks, than clicks. And I think this is a really important strength of the online high school. When you are in person with people, there's a physicality that happens, right? And when you're just online and you're learning, you learn to really respect someone for their thoughts and what their mind and what they're sharing in class. And all you see is their hand. So you escape a lot of that. And if you think about a regular brick and mortar high school, it's a lot for some kids who are really smart. It's hard for them. So the online high school to me was a more nurturing environment. And the kids even said that they feel like they know these people that they go to school with at Stanford better than they know the kids at their brick and mortar school. So I thought that was really interesting, and I know people will think that's controversial, but that's what we've noticed. Now, one of the things we did do, we realized that some students, especially the gregarious ones, by the way, that would be the gregarious students needed interaction more than just online. Mm-hmm. So we created the graduation week, but that wasn't enough. So what we did is we organized these meetups all over the world and the United States. Mm-hmm. And so families would host anyone who's, within flying distance or driving distance. And those really took off. In fact, one of the first big ones, they had one in California, in the Bay Area, because we have a lot of students in California. And then they had one in Washington, in a suburb of Washington, D.C. And I happened to be in D.C. I think I was, nice. And I was meeting with a congressman about online learning. But anyway, So I'm sitting there, a resident of California, in Washington, and then there's a big group in California, and we had this big screen TV in both
Oh,
places,
wow.
and we set it up so that the two groups could interact. It was hilarious, but it was fabulous.
Yeah,
So,
that's so much fun.
yeah, and they're going on, and if you have never been to one, I highly recommend you go. It's really fun to see people, even if they're not in your grade, just to see other OHS students and their families. It's just fun. It's fun to get together, and that happens all the time now, all over the world. There was a family in China who hosted a group of students, and literally, this family, we they would reserve the entire restaurant for us.
Oh,
Nobody else in the. Yeah, it was fabulous, and
okay.
so some of these, I think that was probably the most elaborate one, but these
Yeah.
meetings are just fantastic, and highly recommend you go. So that was one way, Homeshire, that we tried to overcome the fact that the students are with each other all the time. But a lot of our students, just frankly, are so busy in their communities, right? they're they're on competitive teams. They're acting. They're leaders in their community. So I think that in addition to the online high school interaction, and then they've got the meetups, and then they've got their own really busy schedules. I don't think they have time for anything else. But that's um, so let's see. Let's see if
Yeah.
yeah, I think I've got it. I think I've kind of covered all the stories. Let me just see if there's any other little
There's so
story.
many books about solo.
Although I have to say about the leadership course, that's
Uh-huh.
really just because I still teach it, and I hope everybody takes it. But where that started was in the very first year. Ray Revalle said, "We're going to do a summer program." Now we have nothing planned, and I just launched the school, so I'm like, okay. So we were, the very talented faculty and I met, and we decided what we were going to offer for the students. And I said, I'm going to offer a leadership course because the students must learn to work in teams together, right?
Mhm.
Because it's harder online to do that, and not anymore. It seems like everybody's like a master at this now. But at the very beginning, this was not the usual way students interacted in teams. And so a lot of it was focused on teams. In addition, I brought in leaders from Silicon Valley to talk, inventors and CEOs of companies and investment bankers, and to talk to the students about their lives and what they did as models for the student. Anyway, that turned out to be really successful. So then I thought, oh wow, when I fired from the head of the school, it was the students who went to me and said, you've got to offer your leadership class during the year so that it becomes embedded in online high school, because we don't want it to stop.
Yeah.
So I did that, and that's why it ended up on Friday, because I'm like, we cannot add another class to the student schedule. You know how that goes with student. And I set up the school. I knew how hard these courses were. So I'm like, okay, well, we meet 8 times a semester on Friday, very minimal, but very impactful. And that's the key. Very impactful, the information that I convey to you. Not always on teams, but on aspects of leadership. So anyway, hope everybody takes that course, and it's here because the students wanted it.
Yeah, everybody should take that course. I took it, personally recommend it. Great course. But yeah, while we're on the subject of leadership too, I wanted to hear some of your thoughts on education leadership, because you've done so much in these areas. So